The recording device was still running when Thomas Walker realized what he had done. His hands trembled as he stared at the small audio recorder clipped to his uniform belt. The red light blinked steadily in the dim corridor of Clarence House. He had forgotten to turn it off after the security briefing. A simple mistake. The kind any royal guard might make after a 12-hour shift. But Thomas had just recorded something no one was ever meant to hear. 20 minutes earlier, he had been standing at his post outside the king's private study. It was a Thursday evening in late November. Rain tapped against the tall windows. The palace was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. Thomas was tired. His feet ached. He had been standing in the same spot for hours, barely moving, barely breathing. That's when the voices started. At first they were muffled. Just the low hum of conversation seeping through the heavy oak door. Thomas didn't pay attention. He wasn't supposed to. Royal guards were trained to be invisible, to see nothing, to hear nothing, to remember nothing. But then the voices grew louder. King Charles was speaking. His tone was sharp, strained. Thomas had served in the royal household for 6 years. He had never heard the king sound like that. There was anger in his voice, yes, but something else too. Something that made Thomas's stomach tight in pain. Before you hear what happened next, if you love stories that reveal the hidden truth behind closed doors, subscribe now. You won't want to miss where this goes. The Queen Consort responded. Her words were unclear, but her voice carried through the door like a wave. It wasn't shouting. It was worse. It was the kind of voice that comes when someone has been holding everything inside for too long. The kind that cracks when it finally breaks free. Thomas shifted his weight. His hand instinctively moved to his belt, checking his equipment out of habit. That's when he felt it. The recorder, still on, still capturing every sound in the corridor. His heart stopped. He reached for the device, his fingers clumsy with panic. But before he could press the button, the door to the study swung open. Thomas snapped to attention, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his face blank. Professional King Charles stepped out. He didn't look at Thomas. He never did. The king walked past him, his footsteps heavy on the marble floor. His face was pale. His jaw was tight. There were no guards following him. No advisors. No one. He was alone. The Queen Consort appeared in the doorway a moment later. She paused. Her hand rested on the doorframe. For just a second, her eyes met Thomas's. It was a brief glance, but it was enough. Thomas saw something in her expression that he would never forget. Feared, she turned and walked in the opposite direction, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. Thomas stood frozen. The recorder was still blinking. Still recording. He finally pressed the button, and the red light went dark. Silence returned to the corridor. But inside Thomas's chest, his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He looked down at the device in his hand. It was such a small thing, light, ordinary, but now it held something dangerous. What had he just captured? And more importantly, what would happen if anyone found out? Thomas didn't sleep that night. He lay in his small flat in South London, staring at the ceiling. The recorder sat on his bedside table. He hadn't listened to it yet. Part of him didn't want to. Part of him knew that once he heard what was on that device, there would be no going back. The rain had followed him home. It drummed against his window in a steady rhythm. Outside, the city was alive with traffic and voices and light. But inside his room, Thomas felt completely alone. He kept replaying the moment in his mind. The king's face. The queen's eyes. The weight of the silence after they had both walked away. Something was wrong in the royal household. Something deep. Something real. At 3 a.m, Thomas finally reached for the recorder. His hand hovered over the play button. He took a breath. Then he pressed it. Static filled the room. Then footsteps. His own breathing. The sound of the corridor. For a long moment there was nothing but background noise. Then the voices began. King Charles spoke first. His words were clear now, no longer muffled by the door. Thomas's blood ran cold as he listened. I cannot continue like this, Camilla. I simply cannot. The king's voice was heavy with exhaustion. There was no anger in it now, just weariness. The kind that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long? The Queen Consort responded softly. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see what this is doing to you? Then why? The king asked. His voice cracked. Why do we keep pretending that everything is fine when it clearly isn't? There was a pause. Thomas could hear something in the background. The clink of glass. Someone was pouring a drink, 'cause that's what we do, the queen said quietly. That's what we've always done. We carry on. We smile. We perform. I'm tired of performing, the king said. I'm tired of being told how to feel, what to say, when to speak. I've waited my entire life for this, and now that I have it, I stopped. The silence stretched out. Thomas held his breath. You what? The queen asked gently. I don't know if I can do it. The words hung in the air like a confession. Thomas felt like he was intruding on something sacred, something private, something that could shake the very foundation of the monarchy. The queen's voice softened. You're stronger than you think, Charles. You always have been, am I? The king laughed, but there was no humor in it. Look at us, Camilla. Look at what we've become. We barely speak anymore. And when we do, it's about schedules and appearances and public opinion. When did we stop being real with each other? Thomas's hands were shaking. He wanted to turn it off. He wanted to unhear what he was hearing, but he couldn't stop listening. We have responsibilities, the queen said. Duties that go beyond our personal feelings. I know that, the king replied sharply. Don't you think I know that? But what good is a crown if it costs us everything else? What good is duty if it destroys the very thing that makes us human? Another pause. Longer this time, saw the photographs, the king continued. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. The ones they printed last week? The press is circling, Camilla. They know something is wrong. They can sense it. Let them write what they want, the queen said firmly. They always have. They always will. This is different, the king insisted. This time they're right. This time, there really is a problem. And I don't know how to fix it. The recording continued for another few minutes. The conversation shifted to smaller things. Schedules, upcoming events, the weather. But the damage was done. The truth had been spoken. Thomas stopped the recording and sat in silence. He had just heard the King of England admit doubt, admit fear, admit that the weight of the crown was crushing him. This wasn't just a private argument. This was a crisis, and now Thomas held the proof in his hands. The question was simple but terrifying. What was he supposed to do with it? Morning came too quickly. Thomas, dressed in his uniform with mechanical precision, buttoned his jacket, straightened his tie, polished his shoes until they gleamed. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. His eyes were hollow from lack of sleep. His face was pale, but his expression was calm, controlled, exactly what a royal guard should look like. He slipped the recorder into his pocket and left for work. The journey to Clarence House felt longer than usual. Every face on the train seemed to be watching him. Every conversation seemed to stop when he walked past. He knew it was paranoia. He knew no one could possibly know what he was carrying. But the weight of the secret made everything feel dangerous. When he arrived at the palace, everything looked normal. The guards changed shifts. The staff moved through the halls. The morning briefing was routine. No one looked at Thomas differently. No one asked questions. He was invisible again. Just another guard. Just another face in the machinery of the royal household. But inside, Thomas was falling apart. During his afternoon break, he found himself in one of the empty staff corridors. He pulled out the recorder and stared at it. He had three choices. He could delete the recording and pretend it never happened. He could keep it hidden and live with the secret. Or he could report it. The first option felt like a betrayal of his duty. The second felt like a betrayal of his conscience. The third felt like a betrayal of the king himself. There was no good answer. Thomas? He spun around, shoving the recorder back into his pocket. His supervisor, Commander Harrison stood at the end of the corridor. The older man's face was stern, but not unkind. "Yes, sir?" Thomas's voice was steady, despite the panic racing through him. "You've been requested," Harrison said. "The king's private secretary wants to see you." Thomas's heart stopped. "Me? Why?" Harrison shrugged. "Didn't say. But when the private secretary calls, you go. Now." Thomas followed Harrison through the winding corridors of the palace. His mind was racing. Did they know? Had someone seen the recorder? Had the king noticed something was wrong? They stopped outside a heavy wooden door. Harrison knocked twice, then opened it. "Guard Walker, sir," Harrison announced, then stepped aside. Thomas entered a small, elegant office. Tall windows overlooked the garden. Expensive furniture filled the space. And behind a massive desk sat Sir Edmund Hartley, Kane's most trusted advisor. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. He gestured to a chair. "Sit, Mr. Walker." Thomas sat, his back straight, his hands folded. Professional Sir Edmund studied him for a long moment. The silence was suffocating. "You've been with us for 6 years, sir," Edmund said finally. "Impeccable record. Not a single complaint. You're one of our most reliable guards." "Thank you, sir," Thomas managed. "Which is why I'm coming to you with this matter directly." Sir Edmund leaned forward. "There's been a concern raised about security protocols, specifically about recording devices used during briefings." Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. "We do routine audits," Sir Edmund continued, "and it's come to our attention that one of the devices assigned to you was active for longer than the briefing lasted. Significantly longer." The room was spinning. Thomas gripped the armrests of his chair. "Can you explain that, Mr. Walker?" Thomas's mouth was dry. He could lie. He could say it was a malfunction, a mistake. But looking into Sir Edmund's eyes, he knew the man already suspected the truth. "It was an accident, sir," Thomas said quietly. "I forgot to turn it off after the briefing. I was tired. It was a mistake, I see." Sir Edmund's expression didn't change. "And where is the device now?" Thomas reached into his pocket. His hand closed around the recorder. This was the moment. He could hand it over. He could confess everything. Or he could pull out his empty hand and claim he left it at home. But before he could decide, Sir Edmund spoke again. "Before you answer," the advisor said softly, "I want you to understand something. The royal family values loyalty above all else. Discretion, trust. These are the pillars upon which this institution stands." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Whatever may or may not be on that device, Mr. Walker, you need to ask yourself one question. Are you loyal to the crown?" Thomas met his gaze, and in that moment, he understood. Sir Edmund knew. He knew what was on the recording, and he was giving Thomas a choice: protect the monarchy or expose the truth. The recorder felt like fire in his hand. Thomas pulled the recorder from his pocket and placed it on the desk. The small device sat between them like a loaded gun. Sir Edmund looked at it but didn't reach for it. Instead, he kept his eyes on Thomas. "Have you listened to it?" the advisor asked. Thomas hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. And what did you hear?" The question hung in the air. Thomas chose his words carefully. A private conversation between His Majesty and the Queen Consort? A private conversation about what, exactly? Thomas swallowed hard. About the pressures of duty, about personal struggles, about things that were never meant to be heard by anyone else. Ch! Sir Edmund leaned back in his chair. For the first time, his stern expression softened. He suddenly looked very tired. "Very old. 6 decades, he said quietly. "I've served this family for 6 decades. I've seen 3 monarchs. I've witnessed triumphs and tragedies. I've kept more secrets than you could possibly imagine." Picked up the recorder, turning it over in his hands. "Do you know what the greatest threat to the monarchy is, Mr. Walker? It's not revolution. It's not scandal. It's the truth." Thomas said nothing. He didn't know what to say. The public wants a fairy tale, Sir Edmund continued. They want perfect princes and flawless queens. They want crowns and carriages and ceremonies. What they don't want is reality. They don't want to know that the people who wear those crowns are human, that they doubt, that they hurt, that they struggle just like everyone else. He set the recorder down again. His Majesty is under extraordinary pressure, Sir Edmund said. More than any monarch in recent history, the world is changing. The institution is being questioned. Every move he makes is scrutinized. Every word is analyzed. And through it all, he's expected to be perfect, unshakable, a symbol rather than a man.
Oh.
Thomas found his voice. But he is a man, sir? That's what I heard on that recording. A man who's overwhelmed. A man who's struggling. Exactly, Sir Edmund said sharply. And if the world hears that, if the press gets hold of this recording, what do you think happens? Thomas knew the answer. Headlines. Speculation. Crisis. The monarchy would be shaken to its core. You have a decision to make, Sir Edmund said. You can leave this device with me. I will ensure it's destroyed. No one will ever hear what's on it. You'll return to your duties. This conversation never happened. And the other option? Thomas asked. Sir Edmund's expression hardened. There is no other option. Not if you value your career. Not if you value the stability of this institution. Not if you understand the consequences of what you're holding. The room fell silent again. Thomas stared at the recorder. Such a small thing, but the weight of it felt enormous. What about the king? Thomas asked quietly. What about what he's going through? Doesn't he deserve help? Support. His Majesty has all the support he needs, Sir Edmund replied. Advisors, counselors, medical professionals if necessary. What he doesn't need is his private pain broadcast to the world. Thomas understood the logic. He understood the reasoning. But something inside him resisted. With respect, sir, Thomas said carefully, I heard fear in his voice. Real fear. And I heard the Queen trying to hold things together. These aren't just symbols. They're people. And they're hurting. Sir Edmund stood abruptly. He walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Do you have family, Mr. Walker? Yes, sir. A mother. A younger sister. And if they were struggling, if they were going through something difficult, would you want their private moments exposed? Would you want their pain turned into entertainment? No, sir. Then extend the same courtesy to His Majesty. Sir Edmund turned to face him. Leave the device. Walk away. Protect them the way you would protect your own family. It was a compelling argument, and Thomas wanted to agree. He wanted to believe that leaving the recording was the right thing to do, but something nagged at him. A question he couldn't shake. Sir, Thomas said slowly, what if the king actually needs someone to hear him? What if keeping this secret is part of what's crushing him? Sir Edmund's face grew cold. You're overstepping, Mr. Walker. Trying to understand, Thomas pressed. You've said loyalty is everything. But loyalty to what? To the crown? Or to the person wearing it? The advisor walked back to his desk. He picked up the recorder and held it out to Thomas. Take it, he said. Thomas blinked in surprise. Sir, take it, Sir Edmund repeated. Go home. Think about what I've said. Really think about it. And tomorrow morning, you'll bring it back to me. And we'll destroy it together. Thomas took the recorder, confused. You're trusting me with this? I'm trusting you to do the right thing, Sir Edmund said. The right thing for His Majesty. For the Queen, for the monarchy, for yourself. Thomas stood, the recorder clutched in his hand. One more thing, Sir Edmund added. If this recording ever surfaces, if it ever reaches the press or the public, I will know exactly where it came from. And the consequences will be severe, not just for you, but for your family, your future, everything. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Thomas left the office in a daze. The corridor outside seemed darker than before, colder. He had 24 hours to make a choice that would change everything. Thomas didn't go, straight home instead. He found himself walking through London in the fading afternoon light. The recorder was in his pocket, heavy as a stone. People rushed past him, heading home from work, living their normal lives. None of them knew what he was carrying. None of them knew the choice he had to make. He ended up at a small cafe near the river. He ordered tea he didn't drink and sat by the window, watching the Thames flow past. The water was dark and endless. It just kept moving, indifferent to everything. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Coming for dinner Sunday? Your sister misses you." Such a simple message. Such a normal life. Thomas thought about what Sir Edmund had said, about protecting his family, about the consequences, but he also thought about the king's voice on that recording, the exhaustion, the doubt, the very human pain. A shadow fell across his table. Thomas looked up. A woman stood there, maybe 50, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back. She wore a simple coat and carried a worn briefcase. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. "Everywhere else is full." Thomas glanced around. The cafe was actually half empty, but something in the woman's expression made him nod. She sat down across from him, setting her briefcase on the floor. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at him with an unsettling intensity. "You have the look," she said finally. "I'm sorry." Thomas frowned. The look of someone carrying something heavy, something they don't know what to do with. She smiled sadly. "I've seen it before. Many times." Thomas's guard went up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." She stirred sugar into her coffee. "My name is Margaret Chen. I used to work for the palace. Press office. 23 years. Thomas's blood ran cold. "I should go." "You should listen," Margaret said gently, "because I think I know what you're dealing with. And I think you need to hear what happened to someone else who faced the same choice you're facing now." Despite every instinct telling him to leave, Thomas stayed. Margaret took a sip of her coffee, her eyes distant. I was working late one night when I discovered something. A document. A series of letters, actually. They were private correspondence about the royal family. Sensitive material. Things the public was never meant to see. "Why are you telling me this?" Thomas asked. "Because I was in your position," Margaret said. "I had information that could damage the monarchy. I had superiors telling me to destroy it, to forget it, to be loyal. What did you do?" "I destroyed it." Margaret's voice was quiet. "I burned those letters. I kept the secret. I did what I was told." Thomas waited. Because 6 months later, Princess Diana died. And some of what was in those letters might have helped people understand what she was going through. Might have changed how people saw things. But I had destroyed the truth because I thought I was protecting the institution. She looked directly at Thomas. "The monarchy survived anyway. It always does. But I took away people's right to know the truth. I made that choice for everyone, and I've regretted it every day since." Thomas felt his hands shaking. "How did you know I didn't?" Margaret interrupted. "Not for certain. But I saw you outside Clarence's house earlier. I saw your face. And I recognized that look because I wore it myself once. The look of someone who stumbled into something they weren't supposed to know." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a card. She slid it across the table. "I'm a private historian now," she said. "I document what the official histories leave out. If you ever want to talk, truly talk, about what you know, my number is on that card." "They'll destroy me," Thomas said quietly. "If I do anything with what I have, they'll destroy my whole life." "Probably," Margaret agreed. "That's the price of truth. It's expensive. Sometimes too expensive." She stood to leave, then paused. "But here's what I learned too late," she said. "The monarchy isn't as fragile as they tell you it is. It's survived wars, scandals, revolutions. It'll survive the truth. The real question is whether you can survive keeping it buried." She left. Thomas sat alone with his cold tea and the weight in his pocket. He pulled out Margaret's card. On the back, she had written something by hand. "The truth doesn't need protection." People do. That night, Thomas made a decision. He went home. He sat at his small desk, and he wrote down everything. Every word from the recording, every detail of his conversation with Sir Edmund, every feeling that had been churning inside him when he finished. He had 3 pages of handwritten notes. He read them over. Then he folded them carefully and put them in an envelope along with the recorder. He addressed the envelope. Not to Sir Edmund, not to the press, not to Margaret Chen. He addressed it to himself, to a post office box he would rent the next morning. A safe place where the truth could wait. Because Thomas realized something. He didn't have to choose today. He didn't have to destroy the recording. But he didn't have to release it either. He could hold the truth, protect it, keep it safe, and if the day ever came when it truly needed to be heard, when releasing it would help rather than harm, he would have it. But that day wasn't today. Tomorrow he would go back to Sir Edmund. He would tell him the recorder malfunctioned, that the file was corrupted, that there was nothing to hear. It would be a lie. But it would be a lie that bought time. Time for the king. Time for the truth. Time for Thomas to understand what he was really protecting as he sealed the envelope. Thomas felt something shift inside him, for the first time since that night in the corridor. He could breathe. 6 months passed. Thomas stood at his post in Clarence's house, as invisible and professional as ever. But inside, he was different. Changed. The weight he had carried for so long had shifted into something else. Something he could live with. The envelope sat in a safety deposit box across town. He visited it once a month just to make sure it was still there. Just to remind himself that some truths were worth protecting. Even from the light, Sir Edmund had accepted his story about the corrupted file with surprising ease. Either he believed it, or he simply chose to let it go. Thomas suspected it was the latter. The advisor was too smart not to see through the lie, but perhaps he respected the choice Thomas had made. To wait. To watch. To be ready. The king seemed different too, though Thomas couldn't say exactly how. There was still weight in his shoulders, still tension in his jaw, but something had eased. Some of the desperate edge Thomas had heard in that recording had softened. Maybe the king had found help. Maybe time had worked its slow magic. Or maybe the simple act of speaking his truth aloud, even in private, had been enough to release some of the pressure. Thomas would never know. And that was okay. On a bright April afternoon, Thomas was assigned to accompany the king during a visit to a children's hospital. He stood in the background, watching as His Majesty spoke with young patients. The king's face was warm. His laugh was genuine. He held a small girl's hand while she told him about her drawings. In that moment, Thomas saw what the public saw. The symbol. The monarch. The fairy tale. But he also saw something else. He saw a man who had fought through his darkest moment and found his way back to purpose, back to duty, back to the reason he wore the crown in the first place. After the visit, as they were leaving, the king paused. He turned and, for the first time in 6 months, looked directly at Thomas. It was brief. Just a second. Their eyes met, and Thomas saw recognition there. Not of his face, necessarily, but of something deeper, an acknowledgement of the unspoken bond between them. The guard who had heard too much, the king who had said too much, 2 people bound by a secret neither would ever speak of again. The king nodded, almost imperceptibly. Then he walked on. Thomas's chest tightened. In that moment, he knew his choice had been the right one. Not to destroy the truth, not to expose it, but to hold it. To guard it the way he guarded the king himself. Some secrets protect, some secrets destroy. And knowing the difference is what separates loyalty from blind obedience. That evening, Thomas went to dinner at his mother's house. His sister was there, full of stories about her new job. His mother fussed over the meal. Everything was warm and normal and beautifully ordinary. "You seem lighter," his mother said as she passed him potatoes. "Something good happen at work?" Thomas smiled. Just a good day. It was true. He wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. He had learned to set it down when he needed to pick it up when duty called, to trust himself to know the difference. Later that night, back in his flat, Thomas turned on the news. The king was the lead story. A successful hospital visit. Smiling faces. the monarchy looking strong and stable. The reporter spoke about tradition, duty, and the enduring power of the crown, about how His Majesty was settling into his role with grace and strength, about how the royal family remained a symbol of continuity in uncertain times. Thomas listened to the words and thought about the recording in the safety deposit box. The real story, the human story, the truth that lived in the space between the crown and the man wearing it. Maybe one day, decades from now, when everyone involved was gone, someone would find that recording. Maybe it would become part of history, a window into a private moment, evidence that even kings are human. Or maybe Thomas would destroy it himself before that day came. Maybe some truths were meant to die with the people who knew them. He didn't have to decide today. As Thomas prepared for bed, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for your service, your discretion, your loyalty." It does not go unnoticed. There was no signature, no indication of who sent it. But Thomas knew. He deleted the message and turned off his phone. Outside his window, London hummed with life. Millions of people living their stories, carrying their secrets, making their choices, each one a small thread in the vast tapestry of human experience. Thomas was just one thread, one guard. One man who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong device. Or maybe it was exactly the right place, the right time. The right person to carry this particular burden. He would never know for certain. But as he drifted off to sleep, Thomas felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because the problem was solved. Not because the king's struggles had vanished. Not because the weight had disappeared. But because he had learned to carry it. To honor both the truth and the people it could hurt. To be loyal not just to the crown, but to something deeper. To the dignity of human struggle. To the right to be broken in private. To the understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do with the truth is simply hold it gently and wait for the moment, if it ever comes, when releasing it will heal rather than harm. That moment might never arrive, and that was okay too. Some guards protect palaces. Some protect princes. Thomas had learned to protect something far more fragile. The space where kings are allowed to be human. Where crowns can be set down, if only for a moment. Where the weight of duty can be spoken aloud without the world collapsing. He had become the guardian of a secret that proved the monarchy wasn't just an institution. It was made of people. Flawed, struggling, real people. And somehow, knowing that, made the whole thing more sacred, not less. Thomas closed his eyes. Outside, the city lights flickered through his window like distant stars. And somewhere across London, in a palace filled with history and duty and impossible expectations, a king slept beneath the weight of his crown. Both of them carrying secrets. Both of them doing their best. Both of them, in their own way, protecting the very thing they served. Not the fairy tale, but the truth beneath it. The human truth. The only truth that really mattered.